in studio tonight with Lucille Zimmerman.
Yes.
And our guest tonight is just a very accomplished psychotherapist and counselor, as well as being a busy author and mother. But Lucille, one of the things that I really love is I love dealing with people and helping them understand issues. And one of the things that you've hit on here is something that I have probably said a couple of times, even to my own wife, it's very different. I think if there are any men out there, it's great to understand this dynamic because it'll help you understand your wife. And I'd love for your comment on it. And you say, follow your own North Star. And you do a great job of pointing out that, you know, I'm a guy, so I spend most of my days downstairs in the basement dressed like David Lee Roth. I don't really care what I look like.
Doesn't look like this every day.
No,
That's for sure.
I wear whatever comes out of the closet. But, you know, Tanya, if I come to the door, she'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not dressed up. I come downstairs and rocking 3 days of beard, you know. And I'm like, who cares? But you really point out that women draw their affirmation and accolade from external sources, and your encouragement is to indeed learn to become your own North Star and build your own internal. And I think that's so critical for mental health. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I don't think a lot of people understand that even as children, as babies, and as we grow up, we get our sense of self based on what is reflected back to us. So if you have a depressed mom or a drunk dad, you're not going to have someone who's attending to your self, and so you're not going to grow up with a sense of self.
Sick people make lousy doctors.
Yeah. And you'll, it's very common for people, for say in an alcoholic home, to grow up attending only to everyone else. Let me meet all your needs, because that's how I get affirmation. And I think women especially are reinforced not to ever look inside and say, who am I and what are my passions and what are my strengths? And so I give a lot of encouragement in the book for people to figure that out.
Yes.
Now, I think what's interesting about that, too, is I could almost see like a recipe card effect where you're raised that way by your mom. So when you have a daughter and she's coming to you and she's, I feel these things, you're like, honey, put that stuff away. You know, you're pretty. Do you see that in some of the clients that you talk with?
I do, and it's amazing. Sometimes I'll look at a client and I'll say, tell me your favorite color, and they won't know. Or I'll say, what is the kind of music you like? They don't know. So I may start right there, something so basic. And then I might ask deeper things like, who do you spend most of your time trying to please? Or what's the one question you're afraid I'm going to ask you? Because they've never, ever had a chance to consider that.
Right.
Yeah.
So. And that makes them delve in and really put the spotlight on themselves. Because is it because they're always serving and giving and then they haven't taken the time to really learn about themselves?
I think because that's what we get validated for.
Right.
Yeah.
So. I think you make a good point too. Like, let's say you are raised by a parent who's not complimentary, or maybe even the opposite, who says you're ugly, you're not good enough. If you play that tape in your mind, I mean, that's going to affect your entire adulthood. Right?
Well, it's interesting. It is like the parallel of Mary and Martha.
Right.
You know, where the one is breaking her back, and she's like, you know, look, I'm serving God, and the other one's sitting there, and Jesus, you know, she thinks, okay, he's going to give me the gold star. And Jesus goes, well, this is the smart one, because she's sitting here. And I think, you know, even though he was really talking about drinking in internal, you know, eternal truth, I think there was also, he was trying to point out some logic to us, which is, stop wearing yourself out in the name of good and sit and enjoy the good.
Right. If you think about what most of us do all day long, we immerse ourselves into social media.
Right.
So we're constantly being bombarded by other people's ideas, thoughts.
Yes.
And one of my chapters focuses on solitude. Solitude is terrifying.
Right.
But I think it's so critical.
It is.
So,
wow.
How do you teach people to embrace solitude through your book?
There's a really, really fun video on YouTube if people want to.
Oh, that's cool.
Tell them how to find it.
It's just called How to Be Alone. It's an amazing video.
Really?
It's not my video.
Okay. You need to make one.
So
that'll be your next project.
I would encourage people to go look at How to Be Alone.
So it teaches you how to be alone. Okay.
You know, I can understand that, though. How many times did I used to call you and say, hate being alone?
You still hate it.
Yeah, that's only because I'm married to you and you're too pretty to be away from. But, you know, truly, I think a lot of people, I used to hate being alone.
Yeah.
Because what I would say to myself in my head was far worse than anything. And I found God stuck me in a car for years doing over-the-road sales. And I used to turn the music up if silence drove me batty.
Right.
Well, I think you make a good point about social media, though. We just inundate ourselves with all these voices. And it's also then very hard to hear God's voice. Wouldn't you agree?
It is. It is. And kind of going off that topic, I do want to say that we all have our internal messages, so
Yes.
I call it self-talk.
Yes.
And the best of us do it. Even though I've learned how damaging it is, I could be driving down the road and hit a pipe and say, "You stupid idiot,
Sure.
what is wrong with you?"
Sure.
Instead of being kinder and gentler and saying, you know, who put the swing set in the road? You know,
Right.
something funny
Right.
to change, because we believe what we tell ourselves.
And we're our worst critics. I mean, we say that all the time because we're type A, control freak, perfectionist types, you know, and trying not to be. So I don't need someone else to be critical, because we play that. That's the first thing that would come. I would want to say that to myself. So it's important that we change even our self-talk.
Absolutely.
You know, I think what you're saying really does speaks volumes to, you know, the mother that's sitting out there in
Right.
the audience, because truly, I think a lot of our self-messaging comes from words that are spoken to us. Like, my son thinks he rocks because he gets this positive feedback all the time. And I mean, we've had the benefit of reading books like yours and being exposed to that. But truly, I mean, I did not grow up in an environment where I was constantly encouraged. And I can just see where the trickle-down effect on that 2-3 generations down is so bad.
It is. And I mean, there may be people who joke, and isn't there a Saturday Night Live character that just constantly says, "I'm good enough, I'm smart enough."
Oh, is there? I'm not sure. I don't watch it. Okay.
And this isn't about that. I really do
Yeah.
want people to have a realistic view.
Yeah.
And I also want people to understand, I'm not saying we set boundaries and we don't help people and we don't
no.
serve.
Right.
It's just, I wanted a message that says it's okay to put ourselves on the list.
Absolutely. And I like this thing about your book, too, because you give some practical things, like you said, the drawing the Venn diagrams, even with your relationships.
Yes.
Those two circles should not completely overlap. Right.
Yes.
The circles should touch with your spouse and other members of your family, but you've got to have some outside things, too.
Absolutely. When I was younger and newly married, I felt like I got my entire definition from my husband. And if he's traveling on the road all the time, I'm saying, "What's wrong? He doesn't love me." I needed to develop a sense of self and figure out who I was.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like this, too. In this, your book, Renewed, each chapter starts with renewed through something. So a couple of them, I mean, we're passionate about boundaries as well. So the healthy boundaries, spiritual self-care, figuring out who you are. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I do.
Good. Which one?
I love the chapter on play.
Okay.
Because play is so critical, and I think as adults we forget how to play.
Yeah.
I like my solitude chapter, and I love the chapter on telling your secrets.
Tell me about that one.
I think most of us, we think we have to present a perfect self to the world.
Right.
But it's really the opposite of that. It's vulnerability, and when we're broken, and I'm sure you've talked about this a lot, that's what draws people to us.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying we need to tell our
Right.
secrets to everybody, but I think there needs to be at least one person that knows your story.
Amen. You know what I like? We have a visual that we loved about this. Imagine a vase that has, that's solid, and then you put a light stick in it. Well, there's nothing that's going to shine through. But imagine some that's been broken a little bit. It's to say that you're broken, sometimes we think that means you're shattered and you're nothing and you're dirt. It just means that you're allowing that light of God to shine through the spaces. And that's what you're teaching through. And tell people where they can get your book, because this is awesome. I loved it too because it's real. As soon as I read it, I told Rick, "Oh, this is great," because it's just real and people will connect with it. So where can people get your book?
It came out about a week ago, and it's on Barnes & Noble, it's on Amazon, ChristianBook.com, Cokesbury.
Excellent.
It's on Kindle, so a lot of different formats.
And do you have a website that people should refer to? Or?
Yes, LucilleZimmerman.com.
That's easy enough, LucilleZimmerman.com.
And as always, we will have pictures, and you can connect with Lucille through our Facebook page. So go there and become friends with Atlanta Live, and also connect with us, because we'll have her website, we'll have her book info, and you can connect with her personally.